Hey there, the Games Apprentice back with another Evercade video. This week I'm going to be reviewing the Oliver Twins collection. Is this a collection of classics, or is this one going to send you dizzy? Let's find out. Philip and Andrew Oliver started programming when they were still at school in 1983, and they quickly developed a passion for game development. Their first big success was Super Robin Hood for 8-bit home computers, and this was just the beginning of a prolific, successful career. From 83 to 93, they developed over 50 games across 12 platforms, which included 25 Amstrad games, 17 Spectrum games, and 11 NES games. 26 of those games became #1 UK bestsellers, generating around 5 million sales, and at one point representing over 15% of all UK game sales. Guinness World Record awaited them, the most prolific 8-bit video game developers. The twins became best known for the Dizzy games, featuring the Yolk Folk, a fun cast of anthropomorphic eggs wearing boxing gloves and boots, and their Simulator series. We're proud to present a selection of their finest work, including some lost games that never came out back in the day. Now, I never played Dizzy as a kid, but I saw it in magazines and thought it looked okay. It's always one I wanted to try. So all 11 games on this are new to me. Here they are ranked from worst to best. Number 11, Professional BMX Simulator. I don't know if it's the word professional or the word simulator. Either way, it's an amusing name when you see this one running. Aside from the fact that it looks awful, there's only 3 tracks, all the tracks are tiny, and they've only got 3 laps. There's some degree of difficulty in the fact that the track has obstacles, and if you hit one of the obstacles, it'll likely end any hope that you've got of finishing first. You'd have to practice a fair bit to manage that, but honestly, why would you even want to? This game is just garbage. Number 10. Treasure Island Dizzy. After playing this collection, I've discovered that it's definitely not hard to pick a bad Dizzy game, but it's pretty hard to name the worst one as they all play so similar and kind of just blur into one. The honour of the worst Dizzy game on this collection goes to Treasure Island Dizzy. If, like me, you're new to Dizzy, the general gist is that you can jump, and if you've got too much momentum, you roll when you land, which is annoying as hell. And you need to find and use items similar to a sort of point and click game. There's a few reasons this one in particular is worse than the others. First of all, due to the insane fall damage. Here I am jumping along a bridge, and oof, apparently that slight gradient is more than Dizzy can handle. I get that eggs break easily, but that's just ridiculous. It uses cheap deaths, like a trap that's not even on screen, which is insane for a platform puzzle game where when you die you have to start over. Mostly it's just the difficulty of what to do. Most were fairly obvious and it was more of a case of remembering where items were, but this one I just couldn't get anywhere. Imagine being stuck on a LucasArts puzzle game, dying and having to start over. That's how this feels. Number 9, Super Robin Hood. I guess the main problem with Super Robin Hood is that it just doesn't look very good, and there are tons of better platform games on the Evercade. I'd imagine for the time it was probably alright. You've got a slide move, a bow and arrow, and the levels are linear but with a bit of puzzle about them, and for the most part it's technically sound. It's just not that much fun, and something that I've no desire to ever play more of. Number 8. Mystery World Dizzy.
Let's play Dizzy.
Mystery World Dizzy feels like the most primitive. Still, the jumping mechanic is fairly fun, although it's a little annoying how you can't jump diagonal without a slight run up. You can only carry 2 items at one time, so there's plenty of backtracking. The spider and the mouse enemy are both blended with the background, which just seems badly designed. There are other colours, you know. You've got to be stood in a really specific spot for items to work, and sometimes it's just not obvious where that spot is. I'd imagine this was an okay game back on the NES, but it just doesn't really hold up too well. It's got the same pitfalls and tropes as all the other Dizzy games. Number 7, Dizzy the Adventurer. This one was the first of the Dizzy games that I played on here, and boy did it piss me off. The main problem I had with this one over the other ones is that the controls just weren't responsive enough. You've got to be really precise in some situations with your jump, but it just often wouldn't jump the first time, which is a bit of a nightmare. The little roll after the jump was all the more annoying too, as I couldn't even land on this little boat. Stuff like this is so frustrating when it's right at the start of the game. Number 6. Go Dizzy Go. Something a bit different from the other Dizzy games on here, Go Dizzy Go is basically Dizzy's take on Pac-Man. You've got to collect all the items without the enemies touching you in a maze-like scenario. There's power-ups, such as the familiar ability to eat enemies, as well as other things like putting them to sleep or just making them disappear. After each level, there's a mini-game which feels like something out of Pokemon or The Legend of Zelda, where you're on ice and you can't change directions until you hit a wall, racing against the clock. What it does well. Is it something you're going to want to play more than once though? Absolutely not. But it won't leave you angry or frustrated, it might just leave you wondering if you've wasted some of your life. Number 5. Wonderland Dizzy. This was the first Dizzy game on here that I felt was just about decent. It's still got a lot of the same problems that the other ones have got, but it looks a lot better, and you've got 2 characters now, which means more lives, as having to start over in any Dizzy game is just really boring. The main additional problems I had with this one is that it's just not always obvious what's killing you. Fall damage exists some of the time, but also sometimes it doesn't. And it's unclear in this situation, for example, if it's the fall that's killing me or the creature that's killing me. This was a bit better, but it still had a long way to go to be enjoyable. Number 4. Fantastic Adventures of Dizzy. This one was easily my favourite of the traditional Dizzy games. The puzzles all made sense. It was definitely a case of knowing what item you wanted, you just didn't know where to find it. The level design felt a lot less linear, which meant remembering where you'd been was more of a challenge, and added a bit more to the simplistic gameplay of the previous offerings. The controls also felt a lot tighter too, so if you're only going to play one traditional Dizzy game on this cart, this is the one to play. Number 3. FireHawk. FireHawk plays similar to something like Mega Drive's Desert Strike. You control a helicopter and you've got to rescue people whilst also shooting enemies and buildings, flying in any direction you like. It's a fun game, but its biggest problem is the controls. It feels like it was probably designed to be played on a keyboard, as the D-pad uses up and down to go forward and backwards and left and right to turn. So moving and turning accurately is almost impossible, with you having to deploy the workaround of just using your momentum as you turn. Still, it's worth playing, it's just probably better on a home computer. Number 2. Panic Dizzy. By far the best Dizzy game on this cart is Panic Dizzy. This one abandons everything about Dizzy other than the characters, and becomes a 5-in-1 match 3 puzzle game. Each of the 5 games are all pretty different, so let's go all Inception as I rank a game within a game. Here they are, from 5 to 1. Puzzle Path. There are 2 games on this collection that just aren't worth playing, and this one is the worst of them. You basically just have to move a cursor around the board, touching every number square, but you have to touch them the exact number of times displayed on each one. One problem here is that it's not a particularly fun concept for a game anyway, but worse still is how long it takes to get going. It just throws so many easy puzzles at you that by the time you get to the brain teasers, you just don't care anymore. Picture Perfect. Other than the previous game, the remaining 4 games all use the same mechanic. Dizzy moves along the bottom and can grab an object, stack multiple objects and fire them back onto the grid. In Picture Perfect, you basically have to rearrange the pieces to fix the picture how it was. The problem here is that the picture pieces have such a small amount of picture on them, it's tough to see where they even go, and also it's not really much fun. Maybe if you're into the jigsaws, you'll like this, but it's not for me. Match 4. In this one, you basically have to match 4 in a row, however it's got to be a horizontal row. That many in just a horizontal row is really difficult to do, especially with the little space you're afforded and how quickly the grid starts moving. I usually like these sorts of games, but this one just doesn't work. 4 suits. So in this one, you've basically got to put 4 things together, one of each suit. And I've never really seen this concept before, and I can sort of see why. Having to put 4 different things together is just really difficult, especially when they just use 2 colours. You get chains, but they're just pure luck. It just moves so fast that there's no way you could possibly plan out a chain. It's fun, but just too difficult to get your head around and keep going at pace for long. Dizzy dice. Easily the best one on here. It feels like they came up with this first and then realised they needed more to justify a full price game. Yet another concept I've not seen before. All the blocks are 3 dots on them going in a certain direction, and you've got to match the 3 up in going in the same direction. So if you've got 3 in a diagonal, then you can only match a 3 diagonal. If you've got 3 in a row, it's got to be the same direction of the row. It's really tough, but not as tough on your brain as the previous one, which is what you want for a game that's timed. Horizontal 3 is the easiest, diagonal being the hardest. It's fun and challenging, and it's worth your time. Number 1, Pogie. My Evercade gem of the week goes to Pogie. After playing the other games, I had little hope for Pogie. It didn't seem like the Oliver twins were capable of making platformers that stood the test of time, but Pogie was a pleasant surprise. It's not perfect, one hit kills you, which isn't ideal for a platformer that possesses the potential for speedruns. Pogie is a spin-off of Dizzy apparently, it's his pet. Unlike the Dizzy games though, the controls of Pogie feel really tight, the levels are really well designed, and it's generous with lives, and at no point does it feel like it's just trolling you. It's just a shame about the one-hit kills. It's hardly the greatest platformer of all time, but this is hardly the greatest collection of all time. After playing the collection, I'm not really sure that I missed out on much by not having the Dizzy games when I was younger. I'd have probably just gotten stuck because there was no internet back then, and I'd have never progressed unless it had popped up on the Games Master's consultation zone. I think the idea of the Dizzy games is good, but the execution's poor. They're clunky, and they seem to go out of the way to make sure that you don't see much of the game, which is weird considering how many exist. These games just haven't aged well. If you're not nostalgic for Dizzy games, you're probably not going to get much out of this collection. That being said, Pogie and the Match 3 games were decent, so that's rescued the collection a tiny bit. It's worth mentioning that all profits and royalties from this collection go to the National Video Game Museum in Sheffield. This isn't going to affect my score, but it might affect your decision to buy the game if you're on the fence. I'm going to score this game a 5 out of 10. Thanks for watching. Please remember to like the video and click subscribe for more Evercade videos. I'll catch you next time.